edition of the South Africa-Italy Summit was held in Sandton, Gauteng recently. Since its launch, it has become the main event for the Italian and South African entrepreneurial leadership to strengthen bilateral economic relations.
We started 5 years ago, actually in Cape Town, and then the second edition we invited the president of Gauteng, Mr. Makura, the premier, and he came there and said, "You must move to Johannesburg, and I'll make sure that we create all the possible conditions and hospitality for you to be happy and for investors and business leaders to be very active and satisfied." And so we did a bit, we discussed a lot within our think tank. We are the largest, the first think tank in Italy. We are among the top 10 in Europe. So we share views inside with our 200 people. Shall we do it or not? Because, Cape Town has a sort of Mediterranean attraction, let's say. In the end, we said, well, why not? Let's try the first year and maybe we go back in the next one. We never went back. We are very glad we positioned the meeting in the Gauteng province.
We felt that Gauteng has a lot more to offer because we are doing a lot of work, economic cooperation, but also city to city and province to province collaboration with the Italian cities and provinces. So we understand the compatibility of the economy of our province here and some of the regions in Italy, some of the major regions, some of the major sectors like the automotive industry. Gauteng province is very strong, and Italy has got a very strong and thriving automotive sector. Agro-processing, Gauteng province is the agro-processing hub of Southern Africa, and Italy thrives in agro-processing as well. And then tourism, a particular type of tourism also comes into play.
All investors and business leaders we are inviting here are extremely happy. We limit the participation to 250 CEOs. Only CEOs are accepted. We have about 70 from Italy. We have about 50 from other European countries, and the rest is made by South African CEOs, and we have as many as 50 from the rest of Sub-Saharan Africa, SADC countries. So we are very happy, and not only we are happy because it's a nice event with great contents, with 4 positioning papers we distribute, and with a lot of knowledge sharing and networking, but also because we see the results. The bilateral trade is at historical high. Every year we are beating the records of the previous years. Of course, I cannot claim the fact that we are the only engine for it, but for sure we helped and facilitated it a lot. If you look at the latest statistics from the United Nations, UNCTAD statistics, Italian investments in 2017 are meant to be the largest in South Africa, foreign direct investments. I had in China, I had in the US, I had in Germany. And this is also true for the announced investments, where key companies from Italy has announced an order of 10 billion euro investments in the last 2 years, which is also made by a number of medium-sized companies. So yes, we see the facts, we see the enthusiasm, we see a lot of positive mood. 4 or 5 actually ministers from your country are here, another 4 from different governments of the SADC area. Our deputy minister for education is also participating and signing important partnership with your institutions. So very good. The milestone, the big milestone we think we have achieved, looking at the data from the European Commission, it is because of this summit that major investments have just recently been announced, both in Italy as well as in some European countries that have been part of this summit. The European Commission
in this summit was reporting that they've been tracking how much since the summit started in the past 5 years. Every year, the number of FDI flows into the sub-Saharan Africa have been increasing to a point of 10 billion euros. And we and the organizers of the summit, European House Ambrosetto, we very convinced that the activities of this summit, this year we brought 200 CEOs here in Johannesburg. They are talking about sector by sector, and this year's theme was the focus essentially on the digital economy and the fourth industrial revolution, which cuts across different sectors. We think that this recent investment announcements, especially coming out of the EU countries and specific companies that have attended over 5 years, these summits, the opportunities are opening up now. We are going to feel it here in South Africa. It takes long to get business people to be comfortable. It's not just one interaction.
I think for us as the city of Johannesburg, as a new multi-party government, first time to attend this summit, I strongly believe it's important for us to inform and let the Italian business community in the city of Johannesburg and the country that the city of Johannesburg is ready to do business.
So what synergies do you think there are existing between these two?
Well, I think Italy, as you're aware, it's always been a trading partner of the of South Africa for many years, but unfortunately, what we've realized, it's not obviously something unique to Italy. I think Europe was really beginning to really have doubts about the future of South Africa. So we need to really rebuild that trust so that all of them are aware that we're looking for investment. We're looking for long-term investments, not investments in short-term investments like government bonds and the stock exchange. We want to see investments in brick and mortar, in factories, investments that can assist us to ensure that we can bring down these high levels of unemployment.
This year, under the title Africa-Europe Dialogue, the summit expanded the community of leaders to a Pan-African and Pan-European platform.
You would see that there are a number of ministers and deputy ministers here from Southern African development countries. That is also important because I think that we are not only interested in the growth of the Gauteng and the South African economy, but we're also interested in the growth of the broader regional economy. And this is obviously a very important forum where different actors can get to know each other and look for business opportunities.
Now, if we look at the size of the Gauteng economy, in which way does that help to expand, to bring others into Africa?
Well, obviously the Gauteng economy represents a third of South Africa's GDP and is also the fifth largest economy in Africa after South Africa itself. We are interested in strengthening our own trade and industrial ties with our neighbours. All of us have a common colonial heritage, which means that often our ties are in Europe and not with each other. So I think that what this kind of forum does is it not only strengthens ties with the European community, but it also helps to find areas of synergy within sub-Saharan Africa and particularly within the SADC region. Obviously, each of us have different strengths, different relative opportunities, and this allows for exploration of those on a more systematic basis.
Let's start talking about the extent to which the European Union is investing in Africa at the moment.
Well, at the moment, the European Union are the biggest in Africa in terms of trade and in terms of foreign direct investments. I think that we have all to put ourselves in a perspective of generating more economic growth and jobs for young people, which will be and are already the majority in Africa. So I think that our commitment is not only to stay in Africa as we are, big, but also to think together with the Africa private sector on how we can work further further in order to be even more economically integrated. So economically speaking, Africa is very close to Europe and Europe is very close to Africa. So we have to define common objectives for make this investment even more sustainable and more in the long term.
South Africa is the European Union's only strategic partner in Africa. The EU accounts for 25% of South Africa's trade and 75% of its foreign direct investments. The strength and strategic nature of the EU-SA economic relationship is that it encompasses virtually all economic sectors in the South African economy. This leads to diversification and inclusive growth.
Europe remains by far the biggest source of foreign direct investment for South Africa. About 75% of all FDI in South Africa comes from the European Union. But I would like to have a word about trade. Trade is particularly important between EU and South Africa because, contrary to other partners of South Africa manages to export a lot of manufactured goods and high-value goods to the European Union. So more than 50% of the goods which are exported to the European Union are non-minerals products. And that, of course, is a huge drive to create jobs. This is also possible because of a special arrangement that we have with South Africa, which also applies to the rest of SACU and Mozambique, which is called the Economic Partnership Agreement. Our investors, they rely on the trade framework with the European Union to work with South Africa. So the automotive sector is a clear example. There are inputs coming from the European Union and finished cars going to Europe. So it's really a very structured, very deep relation that has been growing steadily.
And do you see it growing much stronger in the future?
I would say so. I would say that, first of all, South Africa remains the only strategic partner of the European Union in Africa. And when it comes to business and trade, it remains a certain gateway because of the sophistication of the environment here in South Africa, but also because of the growing role that South Africa is playing in the continent, really making the Africa agenda relevant in the world. This is clear when it comes to BRICS agenda, it's clear when it comes to the UN Security Council, where South Africa is going to sit over the next 2 years. So South Africa is really putting Africa at the heart of the world, and in that respect, the European Union is very keen to work with South Africa to grow Africa.
You said earlier that the European Union should have a strategy to see Africa as part of its future, and vice versa.
Yes, I think that on one side we are witnessing the fact that everybody in the European Union speaks about Africa. Maybe the starting point is not the most glorious one because it's linked to migration, but so be it. Now Africa is high on the agenda, in the perception, in the culture of everybody. And the fact to call for investment, presence, partnership is now something really high on the agenda. What I mean is that this is important, but it's not enough. We have to think on what could be a Euro-Africa economic area, where our investments are profitable for us and profitable for Africa. And I strongly believe that this reflection should start very soon, because it's not only a question of dropping investment, it's a question of having a plan. And I believe that we should, if I may use a paraphrasis, have our Belt and Road strategy between Europe vis-à-vis Africa and vice versa, in order to have more strategic interest in planning what is our communality.
After the break, the importance of education and preparing for the fourth industrial revolution. Two papers were presented during the summit. One on intermodal transport in the SADC region, and the other about implications and opportunities for the Southern African tourism industry in the digital age. Other topics under discussion were financial tools to improve Africa's investability, skills for smart manufacturing and latest technologies, scientific and university cooperation hubs, smart technologies, and the city of the future.
The key element, the key area where we need to work upon is education. Upskilling, reskilling will be keywords for the future. I think one of the focal points of the President is also to reduce poverty. Well, this is a great opportunity to also bring all layers of society into the equation. And no, automation is not leading to job losses. Automation might lead to job losses in some domains, but it will create new job opportunities and will increase the competitiveness of South Africa on a global basis so that it can better apply these technologies to make South Africa great again and to work on the biggest market around the corner called Africa.
So yes, there is a lot of fear around technology and job losses.
That is absolutely true, and I think therefore it is also very important that also the unions are getting involved in the discussion from day one. We see a lot of initiatives from the government side, from the private sector, but the unions are also key. Because we are all sitting in the same boat. The train already left the station. The question is whether South Africa will be on the train or not. So we need to start running behind the train now.
You spoke about the need for South Africa to align its education to what the economy needs. Elaborate that for us in the context of the greater European investment and Italy in particular.
The issue is you can't produce unemployed young people. You can't continue to have a mismatch of what the sector wants and what the economy wants and what the sector can produce. So you need to match the two, balance the two, but invest because in the absence of an investment, there is no way that the economy can absorb the young people that we want the economy to absorb. Gone are the days where young people must be trained for the sake of being trained. They must be trained for a specific economic cause, but most importantly, they must be empowered to contribute to that economy, and they can also stand on their own if they need to stand on their own. So our education system has to align, has to move away from where we are. Me and you probably, when you grew up, were told how to draw a frog and all those things, and after drawing it, nothing happened. So we just have to ensure that the economies or the sectors that are doing well, like the aviation school that we had, the nuclear school that we have, the automobile school that wants to open, we need to start to move towards that direction. Because the problem is South Africans is that 80% of our children want to do academic work in universities. It's only 20% that want to do technical work. And the 20% that want to do technical work, they're doing it grudgingly because they wanted to be part of the 80%, and because they didn't succeed, they're doing, and they don't succeed because they're doing it gradually. They're not opening up. So we need to change that landscape where it's only 80% that can do technical and vocational work and 20% can go to universities. Because if you can't do that, this economy is not going to move.
If we are going to look at SADC region from an integrated investment point of view, that we are not just South Africa, we are a gateway into SADC region. Is that how we should be looking at education as well, and how do we make that to everybody's benefit? How do we reduce the cost then of delivering this education that we want for these sectors?
Definitely. That is why we've taken a decision as a Gauteng government, national government. Minister Msek has taken that decision that we support as the Gauteng government of introducing Swahili in our schools. Because if you can't link with Africa, there's no way that we can trade. And you can only trade when you understand the culture, the spirit, the tradition of that particular continent that you are in. And the relationship with SADC, by extension with Africa, it means we are opening new markets for our companies. We are opening new markets for our education system, because if we can provide the skills that are needed by the continent or that are needed by SADC, we'll have more people that will contribute to a better economy and also strengthen the capabilities of our country.
So this 5 years of the edition, and the last 3 years in particular, there's been a concentrated focus on how we link the township economy, various sectors of the township economy, with mainstream businesses, especially where you have greenfields investments. I'm very pleased that the Chemdo industrial hub is going to get a big investment by an Italian automotive company that's going to link there with the township mechanics to help them for the first time now have access into the supply chain of a very established Italian automotive company. That's what we are doing. We are following up sector. There are nine companies that have come into the South African and Gauteng economy in the past, since 2016, when the summit was hosted here. So we think if it wasn't for this summit, these investments would not be happening. So that's something in for citizens, because every investment especially in manufacturing activity, creates sustainable jobs, particularly if these activities and investments are taken into township spaces, which is what as the Gauteng provincial government, we are very determined. We bring big global companies. We now want them to locate in the townships and work with township businesses and offer them access to markets and their supply chains.
And what about the European Union and Italy specifically?
Well, you know, what I was thinking when I was sitting now in the sector on logistics, and if one has to look at what has changed, I think in the early years we were talking about what opportunities are there to do business together. What we're busy talking about in there is what goes right and what goes wrong in a trade relationship when you have complexities around the movement of goods and services, complexities around freight. So if you're talking about how do we improve the speed of freight on road and rail, obviously you're talking about an established trade relationship that you want to make more efficient and effective. So that is what I was reflecting on when I was listening to this sector. We're not just talking about potential, we're talking about actual trade relations and how to make them more effective.
And just looking at the guest list of people here, it's really very high level, some very important people here.
Yes, I mean, I think from the government component, we are looking at ministerial level from our own country and also from our neighbours. In terms of the business component, we're looking at CEOs, and that is significant because you're talking about decision makers who are able to take decisions on investment, but who are also able, once they're aware of certain log jams, they're able to take decisions to facilitate ease of investment, ease of doing business. What all of us are concerned about is growing the economy. I think obviously we are also all concerned that in our own space we need to be doing everything we can to ease the ease of doing business and to be attracting investment. Investment is very important for our province and for our country as a whole. We want to create jobs. We want to make sure that those who are still excluded from the economy have opportunities, and you can only do that if you're growing the size of the economy overall.
You know, a duty of a think tank is to define trends, to assess scenarios, to analyze and raise opportunities and discussions. So we are not meant to be practical in the sense that we do operational developments, but we are the premise, and if we are successful, then global partnership and trade agreements and joint investments and joint ventures can then take place. And we have married a lot of investments under our umbrella of the European House Ambrosetti in the last 5 years in our Indaba event.
And what about investment and de-risking investment on the continent?
Yes, I think this is really the new avenue. I mean, as European Union, we are now finalizing instruments which will allow to leverage more private investment, precisely de-risking. You know, it's not necessarily in South Africa. South Africa is a market in where investments are already profitable and where our business is known and knows. Rather, I would say it would be important to invest in order to help in generating small and medium enterprises. But I think that we both share the fact that investing in certain countries in the Sahel, for example, in the Horn of Africa, while it could be profitable, it entails too much risk in terms of instability, in terms of wars, in terms of capacity, etc. What we have done is to set up an European investment plan which is based on precisely having a guarantee guarantee which is ready to cover all kinds of risks which a businessman can run in making investment, for example, in renewable energy, in infrastructure, in education, in health, in digital, in mobile telephony. So in particular in the countries where this is particularly impossible for the market to finance, for example, to cover the risk. So I think that what we are doing is precisely this, passing from the old aid paradigm into investments and partnering with private sector. Where the market is not able to, let's say, be trustable enough, then we set up this guarantee which is already working and which help in de-risking the private sector. So it's a way not to subsidize but to accompany and to make it possible investment which are productive.